Hello, my name is Rick, and I am going to be your host for another episode of Gaby's Cheating Stories. Welcome back, and we thank you for watching. If you like this stories, please subscribe and comment from what country you are hearing us. Now, let's start. That day, the sun was setting over Miami, casting a golden hue over the bustling streets. Brittany was walking home from her part-time job at a local cafe, her mind wandering to the mundane tasks awaiting her. She had always dreamed of a life filled with excitement, but for now, she was content with her simple routine. That evening, as she passed by a small art gallery, something caught her eye, a painting that seemed to radiate emotion. She stepped inside, her curiosity piqued. Miguel was in the midst of setting up his latest exhibition. His hands were stained with paint, and his hair was a mess, but his eyes sparkled with passion. He noticed Brittany immediately, her presence like a breath of fresh air in the stuffy gallery. They struck up a conversation, and before long, they were lost in each other's words. Brittany was captivated by Miguel's stories of his travels and his dreams of becoming a renowned artist. Miguel, in turn, was drawn to her warmth and genuine interest in his work. Their connection was instant, and they spent the entire evening talking, oblivious to the world around them. As the night wore on, they realized they had more in common than they could have imagined. Both had grown up in Miami. Both had dreams that seemed just out of reach, and both felt a spark that neither could ignore. By the time they parted ways, they had made plans to meet again, and neither could shake the feeling that their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. Their second meeting was at a small beachside cafe, where the sound of the wave provided a soothing backdrop to their conversation. Brittany was nervous, but Miguel's easygoing demeanor put her at ease. They talked about their families, their dreams, and their fears. Miguel shared his struggles as an artist, the constant battle between his passion and the need to make a living. Brittany, in turn, spoke of her desire to find something more meaningful in her life, something that would make her feel alive. As the weeks turned into months, their relationship deepened. They spent countless hours together, exploring Miami, sharing their hopes and dreams, and falling in love. Miguel's art began to reflect his newfound happiness, his paintings filled with vibrant colors and emotions. Brittany, inspired by Miguel's passion, started to pursue her own interests, taking up photography and capturing the beauty of the world around her. Their love was like a masterpiece in progress, each stroke of the brush adding depth and meaning. They supported each other through the ups and downs, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. It wasn't long before they realized that they wanted to spend the rest of their lives together. Miguel proposed on a quiet evening under the stars, with the sound of the ocean as their witness. Brittany said yes without hesitation, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair, held on the same beach where they had shared so many precious moments. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the sand as they exchanged vows. Brittany looked radiant in her simple white dress, her eyes filled with tears of joy. Miguel, dressed in a crisp white shirt and trousers, couldn't take his eyes off her. They promised to love and support each other, no matter what life threw their way. The early years of their marriage were filled with love and laughter. Miguel's art began to gain recognition, and he started to attract clients who appreciated his unique style. Brittany, now a full-time homemaker, took pride in creating a warm and welcoming home for them. They were a team, facing the challenges of life together and celebrating their victories. Their love was like a painting, each day adding new colors and textures. They traveled together, explored new places, and continued to grow as individuals and as a couple. Life wasn't always easy, but they faced it together, their love providing a solid foundation. As they celebrated their first anniversary, they knew that their journey was just beginning, and they were excited to see where it would take them.
Thank you for watching Gaby's Cheating Stories. please subscribe. It just take 1 second. Thank you.
A year into their marriage, Brittany discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them with a mix of excitement and apprehension. They were about to embark on a new chapter in their lives, one that would change everything. Miguel's art career was beginning to take off, and they knew that adding a child to the mix would bring new challenges. But they were ready, or so they thought. As Brittany's pregnancy progressed, Miguel's career continued to flourish. His paintings were in demand, and he started to attract the attention of wealthy clients. He was invited to exclusive events, and his work was featured in prestigious galleries. But despite his growing success, Miguel remained humble, his focus always on his art and his family. The birth of their son, Raul, was a moment of pure joy. Brittany and Miguel were overwhelmed with love for their tiny bundle of joy. They spent hours marveling at his tiny fingers and toes, his soft cries, and his sweet smell. But with the joy came the challenges of parenthood. Sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and a constant worry that they were doing everything right. But through it all, their love for each other and their son kept them going. By the time Raul was 3, their lives had settled into a comfortable routine. Miguel's career was thriving, and they were able to enjoy the fruits of his labor. They moved into a larger home, one that had plenty of space for Raul to play and for Miguel to have his own studio. Brittany had settled into her role as a mother, finding joy in the simple moments of everyday life. Their days were filled with the usual activities, playdates, trips to the park, and family outings. Miguel continued to paint, his work evolving with each new piece. He was still passionate about his art, but the demands of his career meant that he had less time to spend with his family. Brittany, while proud of Miguel's success, sometimes felt the weight of being the primary caregiver. Despite the challenges, they were happy. They had built a life together, one that was filled with love and laughter. But as the years passed, they began to feel the strain of their busy lives. Miguel's success brought with it new pressures, and Brittany found herself longing for something more. They were still deeply in love, but the spark that had once defined their relationship seemed to be fading. As Miguel's career continued to soar, Brittany found herself with more free time than she had ever known. With Raul now in preschool, she was able to hire a nanny to help with his care, a luxury she had never imagined during the early years of their marriage. This newfound freedom allowed her to indulge in the luxuries that Miguel's success had brought them. She joined an exclusive club in Miami, where she rubbed shoulders with the city's elite, women who wore designer labels as casually as she once wore jeans and a t-shirt. She spent her days shopping at high-end boutiques, dining at expensive restaurants, and attending lavish parties that stretched into the early hours of the morning. At first, it was exhilarating. Brittany had never experienced such a lifestyle, and she was eager to embrace it. She and Miguel began to attend parties together, where they were introduced to a world of excess. The alcohol flowed freely, and the nights often ended in wild, uninhibited revelry. They found themselves caught up in a whirlwind of hedonism, their once simple life now a blur of indulgence. The parties were a stark contrast to the quiet evenings they had once shared. Curled up on the couch with Raul asleep in the next room. But for a while, it felt like a fairy tale, a life of glitz and glamour that they had only ever dreamed of. Brittany began to change, though she didn't notice it at first. She started to care more about the labels on her clothes and the size of the diamond on her finger than the quiet moments she used to cherish. She became friends with women who valued appearances over substance, and she found herself drawn into their world of gossip and competition. Miguel, too, seemed to change. His art, once his greatest passion, became more about pleasing his wealthy clients than expressing himself. He spent less time in his studio and more time at parties, his creativity stifled by the demands of his new lifestyle. The man who had once painted for the love of it now seemed more interested in the paycheck at the end of the project. The turning point came one night at a particularly wild party. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and the atmosphere was electric. Brittany found herself dancing with a group of strangers, her inhibitions lowered by the champagne she had been drinking all night. Miguel was across the room, deep in conversation with a group of collectors who were eager to commission his next piece. Brittany caught his eye, and for a moment, they shared a smile, a fleeting reminder of connection they had once shared. But as the night wore on, that connection seemed to fade. Miguel disappeared into the crowd, and Brittany found herself swept up in the chaos of the party. It was that night that Brittany first crossed a line she had never imagined crossing. The party had taken on a life of its own, and as the hours passed, the boundaries between right and wrong began to blur. She found herself in a room with a group of people she barely knew, their laughter echoing off the walls as they indulged in behavior that would have shocked her just a few years earlier. She told herself it was harmless, just another part of the lifestyle they had embraced. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. It was a sign that something was wrong, that they were losing themselves in the excess. The next morning, Brittany woke up with a pounding headache and a sense of unease that she couldn't shake. She looked around the unfamiliar room, trying to piece together the events of the night before. Miguel was asleep beside her, his face pale and drawn. She felt a pang of guilt as she thought about Raul, who had spent the night with the nanny. She had always prided herself on being a good mother, but lately, she felt like she was failing him. She was so caught up in a whirlwind of their new life that she barely had time to spend with him. As the weeks passed, Brittany began to feel a sense of emptiness that she couldn't ignore. The parties, the shopping, the endless cycle of excess, it all began to lose its appeal. She missed the simplicity of their early years, the quiet moments they had shared as a family. She missed the man Miguel had been before the money and the fame changed him. She missed the woman she had been before she got caught up in the allure of excess. But even as she longed for the past, she found herself unable to break free from the lifestyle they had embraced. It was as if they were trapped in a gilded cage, surrounded by luxury, but unable to find true happiness. Miguel, too, seemed to be struggling. He spent more and more time drinking, his once bright eyes now dull and distant. Brittany tried to talk to him, to get him to see what was happening, but he was in denial. He insisted that he was fine, that they were fine. But the truth was, they were both drowning, and neither of them knew how to save themselves. The breaking point came one night when Brittany returned home from a party to find Raul crying in his room. The nanny had left early, and Miguel was nowhere to be found. Brittany felt a surge of anger and guilt as she held her son, his tears soaking into her designer dress. She realized then that they had gone too far, that they had lost sight of what really mattered. She knew that something had to change, but she didn't know how to make it happen. All she knew was that she couldn't keep living this way, not for herself and not for Raul. That night, as she lay in bed beside Miguel, she made a silent promise to herself. She would find a way to reclaim the life they had lost, to rediscover the love and happiness that had once defined their relationship. It wouldn't be easy, but she knew it was the only way to save her family. And as she drifted off to sleep, she held on to that promise, hoping that it would be enough to guide them back to the life they had once known. Miguel's success had brought them financial stability, but it came at a cost. His art, once a source of joy and fulfillment, had become a burden. He was constantly under pressure to produce new work, to meet the demands of his clients. The stress began to take its toll, and he turned to alcohol as a way to cope. What started as a few drinks at parties soon escalated into a full-blown addiction. Brittany watched helplessly as Miguel spiraled out of control. She tried to talk to him, to get him to see what was happening, but he was in denial. He insisted that he was fine, that he could handle it. But the truth was, he was losing himself. His art suffered, his health declined, and their relationship began to crumble. The arguments became more frequent, the tension between them palpable. Brittany knew about Miguel's infidelities, both with men and women, but she chose to turn a blind eye. She was torn between her love for him and her desire to protect Raul from the chaos that had become their lives. She knew that something had to change, but she didn't know how to make it happen. Life at her parent house was a stark contrast to the chaos Brittany had left behind. The quiet, predictable routine was a balm to her frayed nerves, and she found solace in the simple moments she shared with Raul. But as the days turned into weeks, a gnawing loneliness began to creep into her heart. She missed Miguel, not the man he had become, but the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago. She missed his laughter, his passion, the way he used to look at her as if she were the only person in the world. But she also knew that the man she missed was gone, buried beneath layers of alcohol, infidelity, and self-destruction. It was during this time that Brittany began to lean more heavily on Nick, Raul's preschool teacher. Nick had always been kind and attentive, but now, with Miguel out of the picture, their relationship began to shift. Nick was everything Miguel wasn't: steady, reliable, and present. He listened to Brittany when she needed to talk, offered to help with Raul when she was overwhelmed, and always seemed to know exactly what to say to make her feel better. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, their friendship deepened into something more. Brittany tried to resist her growing feelings for Nick. She told herself it was too soon, that she was still married to Miguel, even if their relationship was in shambles. But the more time she spent with Nick, the harder it became to deny the connection between them. He made her feel seen and valued in a way she hadn't felt in years. And when he kissed her for the first time, a soft, tentative kiss that took her by surprise, she didn't pull away. Their relationship was a secret, one they kept hidden from everyone, including Raul. Brittany told herself it was for the best, that she wasn't ready to explain the complexities of her life to her young son. But deep down, she knew it was because she felt guilty. She still loved Miguel, despite everything, and the thought of betraying him, even after all he had done, filled her with shame. Miguel, meanwhile, was spiraling further out of control. Brittany heard snippets of news from mutual friends, stories of drunken brawls, missed deadlines, and reckless behavior. She tried to reach out to him, to convince him to get help, but he was unreachable, lost in a haze of alcohol and self-pity. She felt torn, caught between her loyalty to the man she had married and her growing feelings for Nick. It was a painful, impossible situation, one that left her feeling more alone than ever. The guilt weighed heavily on her, but it wasn't enough to make her end things with Nick. He had become her anchor, the one thing keeping her grounded as her life continued to unravel. And when Miguel died, suddenly, tragically, from a respiratory arrest caused by an alcohol overdose, Brittany was left to grapple with a storm of emotions. Grief, guilt, relief, anger, they all swirled together, leaving her feeling hollow and lost. In the days following Miguel's death, Brittany threw herself into taking care of Raul, using her son as a distraction from her own pain. But at night, when the house was quiet and Raul was asleep, she would lie awake, haunted by memories of Miguel and the life they had shared. She wondered if she could have done more to save him, if she had failed him in some way. And she wondered if her relationship with Nick had been the final nail in the coffin, the thing that had pushed Miguel over the edge. Nick was patient with her, giving her the space she needed to grieve. But as the weeks turned into months, Brittany began to lean on him more and more. He was her rock, the one person who seemed to understand her pain without judgment. And slowly, tentatively, they began to build a life together, a life that felt fragile and uncertain, but also full of hope. Miguel's death marked the end of an era, but also marked the beginning of a new chapter in Brittany's life. She was now a widow, a single mother, and the sole inheritor of Miguel's estate. The money and property he left behind were a bittersweet reminder of the life they had built together, a life that had once been filled with love and promise, but had ultimately ended in tragedy. Brittany threw herself into creating a stable, nurturing environment for Raul. She sold their old house, the one filled with too many painful memories, and moved into a smaller, cozier home in a quiet neighborhood. She enrolled Raul in a new school where he could make friends and start fresh. And she began to rebuild her own life, one day at a time. Her relationship with Nick continued to grow, though it wasn't without its challenges. Brittany struggled with guilt, wondering if she was betraying Miguel's memory by moving on so soon. But Nick was patient and understanding, never pushing her to commit more than she was ready for. He became a constant presence in her and Raul's lives, helping with homework, attending school events, and offering quiet support when Brittany needed it most. Over time, Brittany began to heal. She started seeing a therapist who helped her work through her grief and guilt. She reconnected with old friends, women who had known her before the excess and chaos, and found solace in their support. And she began to rediscover herself, the woman she had been before she got caught up in the whirlwind of Miguel's success. Nick proposed on a quiet evening as they sat on the porch watching Raul play in the yard. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a simple question asked with love and sincerity. Brittany said yes, her heart full of hope for the future. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair attended by close friends and family. As she stood at the altar, holding Nick's hands and looking into his eyes, Brittany felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She knew that Miguel would always be a part of her, but she also knew that it was okay to move forward, to find happiness again. The years that followed were filled with love and laughter. Nick adopted Raul, and the three of them became a family in every sense of the word. Brittany continued to work on herself, learning to forgive herself for the mistakes she had made and to embrace the life she had now. She found joy in the simple things, watching Raul grow into a kind, curious boy, spending quiet evenings with Nick, and rediscovering her own passions. As she looked back on her journey, Brittany realized that life was like one of Miguel's paintings, a complex tapestry of light and shadow, joy and pain, love and loss. Each stroke had been necessary, each color adding depth and meaning to the final masterpiece. And though the road had been long and difficult, she knew that she had finally found her way home. In the end, Brittany's story was one of redemption, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. She had lost much, but she had also gained so much more. And as she stood in her garden, watching Nick and Raul play together, she felt a sense of gratitude for the life she had built, and for the second chance she had been given.
Thank you for watching Gaby's cheating stories. Please subscribe. It just take 1 second. Thank you.